Don't break the law while you're breaking the law. This week at the forefront of the automotive news world has been the crash of the Gimbalia Mirage GT and the driver leaving the scene and rampaging through a bunch of other cars and eventually getting caught and arrested, charged with DUI. And I appreciate everyone who has sent me the link or the pictures saying, Ed, this has to be your next project. You and Freddie need to buy and rebuild this car. He appreciates that as well. I will say that this owner has crashed a lot of cars, including a Bugatti Veyron and a manual Mercy SV, both of which I actually like better than a Carrera GT, but you never know. If it does, despite all odds, come onto the public market, maybe we will try. But the other story that has begun to permeate the automotive world is that there may be a new Cannonball record. And I figured enough of you had contacted me asking me about it that I probably ought to address it in some way. And so I am here to say, yes, there is. Sort of. I made a video a couple of weeks ago about this question of whether or not right now the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic outbreak was the perfect time to try a Cannonball, because so many of you had emailed me and said, Ed, I have this great idea. It's the time for you to take your record back. And I addressed some of the pros, some of the cons, and I think I was right about that. Certain things like Waze that we've always used and enjoyed as a way to find cops and traffic and construction and stuff like that aren't working as well right now because there's not a critical mass of drivers on the road. There's really not many people on the road at all. Truckers, though, there's a lot more of them. They're allowed to drive longer. They're allowed to speed a little bit more. They do a lot more passing. And I have heard that that is a much bigger issue right now. But certainly there were people who decided that this was the right time to go. I said in that video that it wouldn't be me, and I'm saying right now it was not me. There were several drives that have happened lately in very impressive fashion, including one in a white Audi A8L that has achieved a time of 26 hours and 38 minutes. So that beat handily the time of Arnie and Doug of 27:25 set last year, and obviously 28:50 my time from 2013. So it has happened. I have seen most of their proof, and certainly I was able to watch part of their satellite feed to see where they were at. And yes, it appears they've done it, and they have set a new and amazing time. And it was interesting timing because about 6 months ago, a group of us that have done 2904 and C2C, knowing that there were no official multi-car runs planned, we had picked out last weekend as a time for a lot of us to meet in New York and try different things. We weren't all going to race. Different people wanted to pursue different types of records, solo records, diesel records, all sorts of different things, different route records and stuff like that. And me and Travis Bell just wanted to make it across in the restored Transcon Medevac ambulance that we showed the story on recently. And so that car, we wanted to redeem the DNF, and the DNS did not start from last year's C2C Express. Didn't care how fast we were going to go. We just wanted to make it all the way to the Portofino. But obviously as the outbreak happened, as the shelter-in-place rules fell into place, and as everything was going on in the world, including the fact that I had a baby 3 weeks ago, I had pretty much decided we weren't going to go. Most of the teams did. A couple of them did not, and obviously in addition to that, other teams have decided this is the perfect time to chase their Cannonball hopes and dreams. It does appear from this time and other times that have been achieved lately that it is an advantage. Now that doesn't mean that it's okay, it doesn't mean that we need to endorse it, but there's kind of two ways that times achieved during this unprecedented era of American life, but also of cannonballing, could be perceived. The first is sort of with an asterisk. 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we may look back on these times almost like a doping era, or a time when the circumstances either weren't consistent with the challenge that all of the rest of us kind of encountered, or just aren't necessarily consistent with the traditional spirit of what we're going to do. And you just kind of treat those as their own little thing, and the, official time or whatever, the mark to beat, remains whatever it was before all of this happened. Kind of like when they had special hydrophobic swimsuits in the Olympics, all the times got insane. They backed those off. They said, look, I'm not saying you can't be proud of those times. They're just not what we're going to treat as the mark to beat. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is just outright condemnation, that the idea that anything that you would do that could distract law enforcement or do anything that would be dangerous right now or inconsistent with just staying in your home and watching the internet is just terrible, and that we're kind of like hitting law enforcement while they're down. And that is a risk. Like, the world may crucify them, and I do anticipate a considerable amount of negativity in this and in any other articles that discuss what has happened with respect to Cannonball. the idea of driving fast across the country is somewhat redeemed by the nod to historical precedent, the fact that this is really a thing that happened. There were some entertaining movies about it, and it is kind of part of American car culture. That was part of what drew me to it. It's what most of us like about it. And so the fact that we get away with something that is somewhat deviant and is law-breaking kind of hinges upon that principle, that people think it's kind of okay because, yeah, it really did happen, and these guys just are adding their names to the history books of Cannonball. Right now, I don't know that the public appetite is really ready to concede that indulgence. Most of us have decided that this was not the time to pursue something like that. Now, of course, that doesn't give me the grounds to condemn a drive like that. I get the hypocrisy that would be involved with me saying, oh, these guys shouldn't have gone. No one should go out driving. Just because their brand of law breaking is different than mine doesn't entitle me to say that they're wrong. That would be like a cocaine dealer telling a heroin dealer that he is just a terrible, terrible person. That's not really my gavel to cast, although I do anticipate many of you will do that for me. But there's a great movie called Molly's Game, and it's about this girl that organizes what becomes sort of an illegal poker game. And early in the movie, she's speaking to her lawyer, and he offers her the advice about introducing some other things that might surround a potentially illegal poker game. And he says, don't break the law while you're breaking the law. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Like, yes, speeding is breaking the law, but when you pile on, violating shelter-in-place rules and travel restrictions and things like that, and social distancing, that does elevate the stakes. And I think that if anybody does get caught by law enforcement in doing this, I think that the chances of much broader penalties could be there. Who knows what would happen? It's always speculative until someone experiences it, but at the same time, I do think there is some exposure and some vulnerability to that right now. But is it a record? Well, on one hand, a record is objective, quantitative. It is the fastest time, and so by that regard, it is a record. But a record is also subjective, and there's a qualitative aspect to it of it is what people chase. And that was my concern when I saw the time, because the treasure of Cannonball to me wasn't in holding the record, it was in chasing a record. And the chance to see if I could measure up against these heroes that I had from the 1970s, and Brock Yates and Dan Gurney and everyone else who had tried to do this and done it in such an awesome way, I loved the chase. I loved solving the multivariable equation. I loved joining this fraternity of lunatics that care about it. And I loved the friendships and the relationships that I've been able to build through the pursuit. And there's always some mark out there that if it feels unbeatable, you never try. And whatever your goals are, whoever's thinking about Cannonball, if this is demonstrated to be a set of circumstances that can't be replicated unless the whole world shuts down, then it could destroy the pursuit. And I'm not sure that that's best. I'm not sure if it will. But what I'm saying is that it's best, I believe, to treat these as their own weird anomalistic exercise. That yes, right now, crazy things might be possible, but those don't necessarily represent the craft that we've all pursued over the last 50 years. Now, maybe it's not my position to say that, and I'm not here to take anything away from the drives that have been, but I am here to say, that's not the world we faced when we got in a car at the Red Ball Garage. And it doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't mean it's not something that they should be proud of. There aren't real rules to outlaw cross-country road racing. There's just a different drive every time you get behind the wheel. I am so thankful, though, that in all the drives I've heard about, there have been no issues with safety. None of the teams have crashed, have really had any bad run-ins in law enforcement. Nobody has contracted the virus. Nobody has transmitted the virus. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it anything, but it does at the very least maintain the immaculate safety record of the pursuit of Cannonball, where no accidents have involved any other cars, no one's really gotten hurt, no bad outcomes. And who knows what will happen in the coming weeks. I hope, I pray that that remains the case. And I hope that we get over this pandemic as soon as possible. We are living in some strange economic times, and Premier is here to help you use those circumstances to buy your dream car. They have a simple lease program that makes it easier than ever to buy your dream car. They do financing for vintage and exotic cars. I've used them in the past and I absolutely love Mitch and his team over there. So be sure to contact them before you go shopping to understand and get pre-approved for whatever your buying power is. That way you can go to the dealers, go to the private sellers, and make a very qualified but perhaps a little bit insulting offer.